Well, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Is that close enough? Okay. I'm not the Assistant Dean of Students, so I do want to correct that, even though I would love that promotion. I'm the Assistant Director in the Dean of Students office, just for quick clarification. First, I'd like to have each of us introduce ourselves, and then we'll go through area by area, and again, provide some insight into what we do, what you need to know, and then some information about what's good to know about each of our areas. Nicole?
Hello, my name is Nicole Robertson, and I am the Assistant Director for the Office of Equal Opportunity.
And I'm Kim Osada. I'm the Director of the START office, which is involved with TSI and college readiness testing and early alert system on campus.
Hello, I'm Melinda Carroll, and I'm an Associate Registrar in our Registrar's office here. I'll be talking today about FERPA, but my main role as an Associate Registrar is records, graduation, and then the degree audit system for the university.
Hi, my name is Ron Venable. I'm the Director of the Office of Disability Accommodations, and I'm here to help you avoid being sued, so. No, we do much more than that.
And I just want to take a second and let you all know that I work with each of these areas and these individuals fairly regularly with my job in the Dean of Students office. They're good folks to know. It's nice to be able to put a face to the name. If you need to contact any of them, they're all very approachable, and they work very hard to make all of our jobs and lives easier. So first of all, thank you all. So I'm going to start really quickly and talk about the Dean of Students office. There's a lot under the umbrella of the Dean of Students. In addition to the Dean of Students proper, we have Greek Life that reports to our Dean and Student Legal Services that reports to the Dean. But then within the DOS specifically, we handle student conduct administration. That's a big one, and one that's potentially impactful to each of you. We also have the care team is housed within the Dean of Students, and the care team is our behavioral intervention team, crisis response. When it comes to students who are facing various forms of crisis, most frequently it's mental health concerns, which again could be very impactful to you as individuals who interact with our students on a daily basis. We also, a relatively new component to the Dean of Students office is working with students who are initiating their own withdrawal from the university. They must meet with our withdrawal coordinator within the Dean of Students office to do so, and we'll meet with them to figure out, okay, how do you exit gracefully, how do you exit successfully, and if there are solutions to the problems that you're facing, let's seek those out and see if we can keep you. As we all know, retention is a hot topic, it's a buzzword right now, and we want to do our best to keep our students here if we can. And then we have our Seeking Options and Solutions, which is a program within the Dean of Students office designed to help students problem solve. How do you talk to your instructor if you have a question about something, or if you're having struggles, or if you have a grade appeal, or anything like that? The Seeking Options and Solutions can really sit down with students, spend some time working through some of those things. Most frequently, it becomes an English-to-English translation of, hey, this is what the policy says, this is what it means, this is how you do it, and supporting that student through those processes. When it comes to care team, I mentioned that briefly, and student conduct, I am hosting an afternoon session, so if you have more specific questions for that, I would love to see you there. It's in the breakout from 1:30 to 2:20, where we'll talk a little bit more about your roles and resources. If you're interacting with a disruptive student and want some help there, or have concerns about a student due to their mental health or other crisis.
All right, and hi, this is Nicole Robertson again, and I have a short presentation. And I'll just go through the slides. But again, my name is Nicole Robertson, and I work with the Office of Equal Opportunity. And then to start, our office services students, faculty, staff, UNT visitors, and individuals doing business with UNT. So we are here to help you with any matters regarding discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Our areas of responsibility are, just to give you an overview, our office is the primary office here at the University of North Texas, responsible for enforcing the university's equal opportunity policies and for investigating complaints of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. You would come to our office for those if you had any concerns in those areas. The non-discrimination harassment clause for the University of North Texas states that it will not discriminate on the basis of race, religion, color, sex, sexual orientation, age, national origin, disability, disabled veteran status, and veterans administration status, veterans era status in the education programs, admissions, or employment. And that's important for you to know. So if you feel that you're facing discrimination in any of those areas, you could come to our office, whether you're a student or a faculty member. And then this is further reinforced in our, in the university's commitment to comply with federal, state, and equal opportunity laws and regulations with the university through its diversity policy, which declares harassment that is based on an individual's differences to be inconsistent with the mission and educational goals of this university. So, and also just to let you know that if you do file a complaint with our office, you are protected from retaliation. So you will not be retaliated against for filing a complaint with our office by your staff or by faculty members. And if you are retaliated against, you may file a complaint with our office. Also in our office, we handle all sexual harassment complaints, and sexual harassment, just to give you a definition, is any unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. And you should not have to endure that as a student or as an employee at the University of North Texas. There are two forms of sexual harassment. The first one is quid pro quo, which basically states if you give me, for example, if you give me an A, I'll give you an A if you have sex with me. So that type of conduct is inappropriate, or if maybe they'll say I give you a promotion if you have sex with me or for sexual favors. You should not be subjected to that type of conduct as well. The next one is a sexual hostile environment, which, and I'll read it to you, when the unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature interferes with an individual's academic or professional performance, because it creates an intimidating or hostile or offensive employment or educational environment. And in these cases, you can be a third party. So if you have two co-workers engaged in a sexual relationship and it makes you uncomfortable, you can file that type of complaint with our office as well. We also handle Title IX, which excludes discrimination based on the basis of sex. So you will not be discriminated against because you're a male or a woman in the receipt of educational programs or for financial assistance. The university will actively monitor Title IX and coordinate compliance and investigation of complaints of sexual discrimination. So where do you go to report Title IX complaints? You would go to our office, and we have a Title IX coordinator named Lori Allen. And our office is in the Hurley Administration Building, and there's our telephone number. You can also meet with the Dean of Students and also UNT Police. Who may file a complaint? You may file a complaint as a student, as a faculty member, as a staff member, or even as a third party, because it may create a sexually hostile environment for you. In the internal complaint process, just to give you an overview, if you look on our website, we have the UNT non-discrimination, equal opportunity, affirmative action, and non-retaliation policy, and also the UNT sexual harassment policy. And then our complaint form is also listed there online, and it can be submitted to our office. Next, false complaints. We definitely take all complaints of sexual harassment very seriously, and we will investigate them. But if we determine that a complaint allegation was made falsely, then disciplinary action may result as a result of that false allegation. We investigate complaints, and we also try to mediate our complaints. The first one, just to let you know that we're very objective, we're nonpartisan. We will not be an advocate for the student or the employee. We would just, our main goal is to get to what happened in those instances. We're non-adjudicatory, meaning we are not attorneys, nor are we judges. We are investigators, and we will be looking into the matter from that perspective. We investigate complaints informally and formally for resolution, and if possible, we do try to mediate cases. Next, this is a list of our UNT equal opportunity policies. You'll see the numbers listed, the non-discrimination policy, sexual harassment, and then you'll see the consensual relationship policy. This is very important. As a faculty member, a TA, you are not to enter into a sexual relationship with your students. It is against UNT policy. So I know the students were on the panel talking about the barrier, but you definitely do not want to cross that line with your students. Then we also have our informal procedures, information and procedural guidelines, as well as employment of people with disabilities. To reiterate, I covered a lot of policies, but it's important that you become familiar with those policies. They are all listed online, or if you have any questions, you can contact me or someone in our office. We will have a resource table set up during break. If you have any additional questions, you can always call us or email us if you have questions. And then this is a list of the employees in our office. Lori Allen is our director and Title IX coordinator. I am the assistant director. Again, my name's Nicole Robertson. And then I have an equal opportunity specialist named Valerie Green. Tammy Patterson will be at our resource table today if you have any questions. And then an administrative assistant, Carmen. And there's, again, our address and contact information. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact us.
All right, thank you. My name is Kim Osada again, and I'm the director of the START office. And I have a resolution. I'm going on a PowerPoint diet this year, so I don't have a PowerPoint presentation for you, but I am going to have Nancy post something afterwards. So if you want to refer to it afterwards, you can. If you're not taking good notes or anything, you'll refer to it later. But what my office does is we are primarily the college readiness office on campus. So we offer assessment and advising to students who are not quite college ready, and reading, writing, or math. And then one of the other hats that we all wear in my office is that we are the coordinators of the early alert system on campus. Is anybody familiar with early alert systems in general? Excellent. All right. At UNT, we have an online early alert system called EARS, and it's accessible through all of your class rosters online. Has anybody taken a look at their class roster yet? Yay, okay. If you look next to each student's name, there's a little, looks like a little person, and that's the early alert icon. If you feel like any student in your class is having trouble either academically with attendance issues or behaviorally, and you want to nudge that student, maybe you've tried emailing him or her, you've tried talking to him in class and you're just not getting through, you can submit an early alert on that student, and our office will respond to the student usually within 24 hours or with one business day of getting the alert. And we're all counselors and advisors in our office, so we're not well, we are teachers as well, but they don't know that. And what we can do is we can approach the student in a way that says, hey, we really want to help you. We're counselors. We're here to help students succeed at UNT. What's going on? How are you doing in your classes? What can we help you with? Are there any resources we can connect you with on campus or off campus that'll help you be successful? And we contact the students, like I said, all of the information is kept online and a secure site so that once you submit an alert, it gets submitted only to the people who are responding to that alert. And then we keep our notes in there, and if you have questions later on about an alert, we can reference those notes and let you know, okay, yeah, we did contact this student, and he or she is going to be contacting you during your office hours or after class and let you know what's going on. Within FERPA regulations, and Melanie's going to talk about those later, so I won't get into those. But it's a system that's in place to really help retain students and help them get connected to services that they may need but they're not aware of, or they may be just too uncomfortable to go talk to those people on their own. They need a little nudge from someone on campus who says, yeah, it's okay to talk to a counselor. Or, yeah, financial aid is tricky, so why don't we set you up with an appointment with a financial aid counselor, or the money management center, the health center. I mean, there's so many resources on campus. Students don't know or they're not aware of all the services. So we can help point them to those services and get them hooked up with those services that they may need. Has anybody taught before, either at the college level or high school, primary level? Okay. And your students all came to class every day, right? No? Okay. Maybe you've noticed that as the semester progresses, attendance gets progressively worse. That's usually what we get alerts for, is students stop coming to class, or they stop responding to emails if it's an online class, or they're not turning in assignments, okay? Maybe you've tried to contact them, your TAs have tried to contact them, you've called or emailed, and you're just at the end of your rope. Put in an early alert. We will contact them by email. If that doesn't work, we go to the phone. We track them down, and then we talk to them as an advisor, as like a friendly voice on campus, and say, hey, this isn't going to work. Really, if you want to be successful, and I think you do, you need to go to class. You need to talk to your instructors. You need to be more present, not just sitting there in class, but actually listening, taking notes. The Learning Center is a good place to go if you need help taking notes or test taking, and kind of getting at the heart of the problem. Of course, if you experience a true emergency, please contact the campus police. Okay, but that's for true emergencies, and I always encourage people to have the campus police phone number programmed into your cell phone, just in case. You may never use it, but just in case. But the early alert system is there in case you just have a question about a student, you just can't get a hold of him or her, or something, you think something's going on, either because they're not attending or they've attended and maybe in a paper they've turned in or a discussion that they participated in, they said something that really worried you. Put in an early alert. There's also the care team on campus. We work very closely with them, and for certain alerts, they are directly routed to the care team on campus. So the alert system, it's a new version. We just started, we piloted it last spring, and now it's fully grown, and it's an automatic system. So as soon as you put an alert in, we get it. Now, if you put it in Sunday night at like 11 o'clock, I'm not going to look at it till Monday morning, but we will get it and respond to it right away. And that way, if there is a behavioral issue or some kind of mental health concern, that will get passed on to the care team right away, and they will contact the student as soon as possible. We also work with the Learning Center, so any kind of academic performance issue gets routed to them right away as well. So the student doesn't get passed around from department to department. They go straight to the Learning Center, who contacts them and says, hey, we have workshops and we have tutors that are available. We would love to help you. Test taking, writing, reading, anything you need. So that's what we're here for. And I'm going to pass it on to Melanie now so she can talk about FERPA.
And just one correction, I'm Melinda Carroll. We have two males in our office, and they tend to get confused. Melanie Snook's also another good resource within our office as well. She's responsible for registration and faculty rosters and things like that. But I am going to talk very briefly today about FERPA. I'll also be available at the break I have a handout of do's and don'ts and just a quick resource. But our office is responsible for making sure that faculty, staff, as well as students and parents are aware of what FERPA is and basically how it affects your jobs and things like that. FERPA is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. It is a federal law, and it protects the privacy of the students' records and it applies to all educational agencies that receive any type of funding from the Secretary of Education. There are some primary rights under FERPA. First, the student has the right to inspect and review all aspects of their record. They have the right to amend their educational records, and then also they have to have the right of some control over what disclosure of information of their records. Students can allow certain individuals to have access to their record, or they can also withhold directory information, or excuse me, withhold information. And I'm going to define what educational records are just so you're aware of this as an instructor. Records can be in handwriting, they can be printed documents, anything on your computer, videotape, audio tape, film, microfilm, it does still exist. Your email, within your UNT student email, or anything that would have to do with email correspondence within the student, with the student. And then it would be information that's contained directly related to the student, and then maintained by the agency or institution. And then educational records that are not included or included as educational records, or if you have records or notes in your possession that are only revealed in your absence, basically. But if you take notes, those are not considered. If you have an issue with a student or something like that, those, if they're in your possession and you're in your sole possession, those are not considered educational records. However, once it becomes a part of the student's file or record with the institution, that is part of their educational record, okay? Educational records cannot be released to anyone other than the student, if, again, as I mentioned previously, unless the student actually signs the student consent form to actually grant access to another individual other than the student. Many times students will grant access to their parents or a spouse, depending on the situation, or another individual. And that information on the form that we have, it specifically allows the student to specify what area of discussion and what offices, if it has to do with financial aid, their student accounting, or if they list all of those things or all aspects of their record, they would have to list the individual, and then that's maintained within the student's academic record permanently. However, there is a, excuse me, a second option for students who are claimed as dependents on their parents' income tax. There is a parental affidavit that parents are allowed to sign under FERPA to be granted access to their student's record. However, this is it's a yearly thing. If a parent chooses to complete this affidavit, and whenever there are parents that contact our office, and I explain this during orientation, parent orientation, I explain the option of this, but we typically want to try and meet with the student and the parent to see and explain to them that if they choose the parental affidavit to have access to their student record, we want to encourage them to use the permanent, have the student, so the student's aware that their parents are contacting our office. However, we don't say you can't do this. If they contact our office, the parent, we let them know that this is an option. However, there is another option that is a permanent request that the student can grant to, and many times, most cases, they go the route with having the student actually completing the form and giving them access. And this is something that you want to keep in mind if a parent contacts you, that if there is not a a student consent form on file, either within your office or within the registrar's office, you need to be careful of what information is released. In educational records, again, the part of the educational record that can be released to anyone without written consent is directory information. However, if you do not feel comfortable releasing information, under FERPA, you are not required to release that information. If you do not feel comfortable, you are not required to release that information, but there is directory information that can be released. And that information, I didn't put a slide in here because there's a lengthy listing on the FERPA UNT FERPA website of what is approved directory information. But directory information is information contained in an educational record of a student which is not considered harmful or an invasion of that student's privacy. And again, institutions determine what they consider to be directory information. It's institutional based. If different institutions have different directory information. And again, UNT directory information is actually listed on our website. And what I'm going to have available at the break will actually list that as well. There's going to be a handout there. Directory information that can never, or areas that can't be included as directory information are the Social Security number, the UNT student ID, race, ethnicity, nationality, and gender. And finally, like I mentioned earlier, it's very, very, very important to remember that if you have any doubt in your mind, you're not talking to the student, whether it be through email or over the phone, you are not required to give out information. And if you ever have questions about, okay, should I or should I not release information, do not hesitate to contact the registrar's office at any time, either by phone or by email, and we will be there to help you and kind of guide you, you know, and if we need to come over and meet with the student, or if you need to direct the student and or parent, which that they tend to come either together or separately a lot of times, that's our job to make sure that we're helping you and make you feel comfortable with releasing or not releasing information.
Okay, everybody still awake out there? Just want to make sure. I'm going to do something a presenter's never supposed to do and give you guys an opportunity for interaction at the very beginning. You have a choice. Would you rather get my straight by the book, go by the slides, give everybody just the facts and that's all? Or would you like the more interactive, audience response required, maybe even mildly amusing version? Can we have a vote? Regular? Anyone? Mildly amusing? You were going to get the mildly amusing anyway. So, Office of Disability Accommodation recently moved with our colleagues in the START office and the Learning Center over to Sage Hall. So we're under the same roof as all these folks. We report to the Provost's office, and our space now has doubled in size. So we're able to do a lot more in the way of activities, training, testing, accommodating students, and it helps us do business much, much better than the little space we had before. So we like our new home there. Stop by and see us. We have open hours from 2 to 3 every day. Okay. We serve about 800 students each semester with different kinds of disabilities. And here comes the interactive part of this all. So we're going to play a little game called, is this a disability or not a disability? So I'm going to name a few things. You get to vote. And then whoever picks the right one for totally meaningless bonus points can tell us why or why not. So we're going to start with a pretty prevalent condition that's rampant in certain areas, pregnancy. Disability or not a disability? Yes. Do we have a yes? Yes for it is a disability? A few folks say yes, it can be. No. Who votes no? Okay. The correct answer usually is no. Does anybody want to say why? For the bonus points, which are meaningless. Anyone? Nobody? Nobody?
Over to the right.
Ah, yes. You got it. A year is a little bit long. The current precedent that stands mostly is about 6 months. So if it's any physical or emotional condition that's going to be in duration of 6 months or longer, it can be a disability. So pregnancy still is debatable. Usually they do go on for longer than 6 months, but it is something that typically is temporary. But it can be a situation where there are complications. A person could be unable to leave the house. Serious conditions like that could represent a disability. So, next one. You get the bonus points. Good job. The next one would be, let's see, left-handedness. Anyone? Anyone voting for yes, it is a disability? Anyone voting for no? Everybody's voting for no. That one was too easy. Yeah, everybody can guess. But we do occasionally get calls to put a left-handed desk in a classroom because there's a student in there who has to have one. And we have to inform everybody that's not a disability. We don't handle those requests. Go see facilities. So left-handedness is not a disability. Okay, here's a good one. Scotopic sensitivity syndrome. Anybody say that that is a disability? Anyone? Raise your hand. I dare you. Go ahead. Okay. Everyone who thinks it's not a disability, raise your hand. Anyone who doesn't know or doesn't want to commit? Yep, okay. Well, this kind of illustrates the reason why we exist, because what we do is we'll interview a student, we'll assess their history of being accommodated, we'll look at the paperwork from the doctors, the evaluations from psychologists, and we're looking for that diagnosis. And does that diagnosis rise to the level of being a disability? Well, about 9 or 10 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Erlin discovered, quotes, that people who have dyslexia-like symptoms or reading problems, if you give them a different colored paper, they seem to have less of a problem. Or if they put colored overlays or lenses on their pages, it's some way, which has never really been explained, but in some way helps them read without the complications so much. So they started creating these Erlin clinics and basically printing their own money in these clinics because folks could go to them getting this very formal looking diagnostic evaluation of tests that they had invented, which had no scientific validity, not recognized by the AMA or the American Psychiatric Association, but to them it was real. And yeah, some students were helped, but students are helped by sugar pills too. Anyway, they started setting up these clinics, creating these evaluations. Students would take these evaluations with this big technical sounding name to universities across the country. Folks would look at it, sounds real, sounds official, and if you only want to use colored overlays, okay, what's the big deal? Well, it started with colored overlays. Then folks started asking for more time on their exams, distraction-reduced testing environments, special light bulbs to be put in their testing rooms. So it got very, very complicated very quickly, and finally, folks started looking closely at this diagnosis and realized there wasn't any science to support it, and so students with scotopic sensitivity alone are typically not accommodated. But again, that's why we're here. The students will come see us, we'll look at this documentation, and then we'll give you a letter to determine if they're truly eligible for accommodation. So one more. How about a broken leg? Yes, it is a disability, or no, it's not a disability. Well, go back to the rule. 6 months in duration or shorter, typically not a disability. Most broken bones will heal sooner than 6 months, most of the time. So typically that's not a disability. The flu, same thing. Any of those temporary conditions that are going to be wrapped up, hopefully on their own, can still be accommodated on the campus with our friends at the Dean of Students office. Those students can go there, document their temporary conditions. The Dean of Students can write them a note to faculty saying, hey, please let them retake this test. They were in the hospital with the flu or something like that. But typically, a letter won't come from our office about temporary conditions. A student has to have a permanent disability before we accommodate. So you can go to our website at disability.unt.edu that gives you a breakdown of the accommodations that are most common, and you'll also see individual training modules that we've created for you to go to and find out more about teaching students with various kinds of disabilities. Has anyone ever had an opportunity to work with a student who is blind in their classroom to accommodate them before? Anybody? Yeah, one or two, not a lot. And I'll be honest with you, our blind students, most of them, everybody's an individual, but are some of the greatest students to work with. I mean, they have had, most of them, their disability their entire lives and are very familiar with the things that work for them and don't work for them. But if you haven't worked with a student who's blind before, then you know, many people freak out a little bit. How do I do this? This class has maps, or there's going to be essential things in charts and graphs. What do we do? And a lot of times what we'll see is faculty will just say, well, we can just throw that part of the class out. No. We have ways to accommodate. We have a printer that prints raised line drawings of maps and charts and graphs so they can feel what other people are seeing. So there are many ways to accommodate. Don't assume that you need to remove parts of your course, because typically we can find a way to adjust the course material and make it work for the student. So that's important to keep in mind. But there's lots of suggestions like that on the website. Okay, on the next slide, a few tips on how to tell students about our office. Please don't tell the students that you look like you have a disability, go see the ODA. Now, that hasn't happened very often, thankfully, but you get the point. It is a very sensitive, confidential, FERPA-covered bit of information that needs to be handled with extreme sensitivity. So when you have a student who approaches you with a letter of accommodation, ask them to meet with you during their office hours. I loved how the group before us talked about how terrifying it was in some cases to approach a professor. Imagine if you have to go to a professor and talk about your HIV status, the fact that you've got depression, bipolar, even schizophrenia. Yeah, that's a pretty daunting prospect. But students do have to self-report these to faculty. They don't necessarily have to have the specific diagnosis to share with you. And we don't encourage faculty to pry and ask for that diagnosis. Typically, and you'll see what the letter looks like in a moment, the letter certifies that our office has reviewed the documentation for the student and lists the accommodations. We tell students to focus on the specific limitations that are associated with their disability. Like if it was HIV, there may be times when they're not going to be able to make it to class. So focus on those specific limitations and how to accommodate them. So if you have a student who you think should apply for our services, you know, a student who maybe their grades have gone downhill, they've stopped attending class, their appearance has changed, all those signs, it's a good idea to give them a list of resources on campus with the Learning Center, Dean of Students SOS program, and our office, and maybe circle and highlight the ODA a little bit on that list. But it's better to put those all together than just saying you need to go see the ODA. But more importantly, make sure you've got the syllabus ADA tagline. So on our website, it's been approved by the Office of General Counsel. All syllabi on the campus should have this referral statement, and we strongly encourage you to use that language verbatim, because it makes sure that not only are you reminding the students that they can come to our office, but you're protecting yourself, so that if later a student comes in and says, no one ever told me about the disability office. Well, it was in the syllabus, so you were informed about it. So make sure you have that statement. And if the students come in and say, well, I don't want to go to the disability office, or I'm not able to get my paperwork from my doctor, or some other complication, it's your class. If you see a student who needs help, certainly you can help. But be careful with that. You know, it can turn into a situation where the student starts asking for adjustments that you're not really comfortable with. So faculty can say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make any formal or permanent adjustments for you in the class until you go see the ODA. Notice I didn't say make accommodations, because legally they're not accommodations until they come to our office and we certify them as being a disability eligible for accommodation. So be careful when making adjustments without the letter from our office. We do 3 types of letters to faculty. A student often will come to us and say, my professor said as long as I come talk to you guys and start the process, he'll be willing to give me, or she'll be willing to give me, a little bit more time on my exam tomorrow. Well, we won't have time to review all their paperwork and certify them as eligible. Our committee only meets once a week to determine eligibility, but we will take a history and determine if that student has all the things that would most likely qualify them for a disability, at least from their self-reports. So we will provide them with this pre-eligibility letter that states basically that. In our professional opinion, after meeting with the student, we feel they will be eligible. So here are some suggestions you can consider, but it is completely at the professor's discretion with the pre-eligibility letter. Now, the next 2 types of letter are not at the professor's discretion. These need to happen. Do they need to happen as exactly appears on the letter? Not necessarily. We have students who will come in and just try to slip that letter to you under the door after class and say, I just want what's on the letter. If you get that, again, ask the student to meet with you, but when you meet, you can go through the list of accommodations, and if there's an accommodation like absence leniency, but your class is performance-based or a lab, that's a problem. So there needs to be a discussion on how that would work with your lab. Can they go to a makeup lab? Are there other alternate arrangements? Be flexible, things like that. And the final letter is this. I wanted everybody to see what these look like. This is the official letter of accommodation. And you guys are the very first group who are going to be seeing a large percentage of these with the digital signature down there in the bottom right-hand corner. We've just started doing this using the university's ImageNow document database, and that's what a digital signature looks like in that database, trying to save a tree or two. But you may or may not see our signature on the letter. The students don't always sign them, but it's still valid and binding as long as you see that the date on the bottom right-hand in that official signature matches up with the date of the current semester or is pretty close. So that's what these will look like. The boilerplate legal stuff is up here at the top, then you've got the required accommodations that are listed in the middle. Okay, so a few suggestions to talk about. I've already mentioned getting the letters of accommodation to your office rather than in the classroom. And when you're in there, be careful. We had a situation where a student said it was departmental policy to always leave the door open if a faculty member is male and meets with a female student. Well, it's hard for that student to have confidentiality if the voices are carrying outside the room if they're disclosing their disability. So if other arrangements can be made, if a third party can be there, something like that, to make sure the student is not overheard, because this student said she was overheard and started being treated differently by her classmates. So be really careful with that. Make sure no one else is in earshot when you have to talk about it. And let's see. Ask the student again. If you're not sure how to accommodate it, don't hesitate to ask the student. Okay, and lastly, don't deny the accommodations without calling us first. Please, if you just feel like there's no way you can make this happen, don't hesitate to pick up the phone, call us, and we'll see if we can brainstorm and find a solution, all right? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. I think we have a couple minutes for some questions. If anybody in the audience has a question for any of us. Yes. Okay.
As a TA, we don't have offices during office hours. Is that something we should send to the lecture professor to deal with that? Like send students to the lecture professor and they'll inform us of accommodations?
So the question is, what if you don't have an office as a TA or a TF? What do you do then?
Great question, because we often see a communication breakdown. The student will go to the TA, try to disclose a disability, ask for the accommodations. The TA will say, oh, well, you need to go see the professor first. I'd say, if at all possible, since you're in the classroom with the student sees you more often, take the letter of accommodation, make the adjustments, copy the, professor and let him know, hey, I got this letter of accommodation, I'm going to make these adjustments, or I have questions about making these adjustments. But we would ask that you very, very seriously consider going ahead and making that happen for the student rather than requiring them to go track down the professor during their office hours. And if the office availability is not there, set up a time when you feel like you have a chance of being in a confidential environment, like 8 or 8:15 in the morning, some area that you can share, or an open classroom, something like that. Talk to the department. Usually they know what space might be available. But we really, really encourage TAs and TFs and GAs to go ahead and take those letters and prepare to accommodate. Go ahead and inform the professor, but try to avoid having the student get bounced around between you and the faculty member. Okay. I skipped that one. I did all that fun interactive stuff, and I skipped that point because that's huge. There is a line in the current policy as it reads that says letters of accommodation are due before the 12th class day. Well, it was never meant the way it's being interpreted, and some faculty are saying, I'm not taking these after the 12th class day, and we've got a new draft of policy that's been approved and is ultimately going to replace that one, because you can't put a deadline on that for a couple of reasons. Some students may or may not get their disability until halfway through the semester. Others are going through testing here on campus at our clinic, and they have a 2 to 3 month waiting list, so we need to do something temporary for them. But yes, please don't hold to any kind of fast and strict deadline on when you'll accept these letters. We do tell students to please not decide to ask for these right before finals. No, that does not sit well, but do accept them at any point of the semester. Thanks.
All right. We can probably take one more question, I think, for timeliness. Yes, in the back.
You're talking about a letter of accommodation, how long you should keep the letter, where to file it. Another good question. I suggest that you try to find out in your department who the Americans with Disability liaison member is. Every department or every college has a faculty member who is the designated ADA liaison and is there for questions just like that, for you to have another faculty member to go to and ask how they handle, tracking these letters, providing the accommodations. If you're not comfortable with a particular accommodation, they're there for you. So I would ask the ADA liaison that. If you can't find your ADA liaison, I would say, treat it as any FERPA protected document, keep it on file. For roughly 3 years is the retention period for all ADA accommodation requests. So I would keep it for at least that long.
Okay, and I believe you guys have a break from now, and I don't want to speak on everybody at the panel, but I think that we can stick around here for individual questions during that break. But thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
very much.
panelists.
Thanks to the panel.